While one child was blamed for everything, another could do no wrong. Same family, same parents, completely different reality. Psychologists call this the golden child, the member of a narcissistic family system who is idealized and placed above accountability, not because of who they are, but because of what they represent to the narcissistic parent. Sign 1. The golden child is not loved more. They are used differently. Their value to the parent is conditional. It depends on maintaining the image, not on who they actually are. Sign 2. They are rarely held accountable for their actions. Consequences fall on everyone else, especially the scapegoat. Sign 3. The one that will disturb you. The golden child often becomes the narcissistic parent's weapon. Unknowingly or not, they are used to control, punish, and discredit the scapegoat. Sign 4. Growing up without accountability does not build confidence, it builds fragility. The golden child often struggles deeply when adulthood no longer rewards the role they learned to play. Sign 5. Neither role was chosen. Neither role was fair. The scapegoat carried the shame. The golden child carried the illusion. That is not parenting. That is a system using children to manage a parent's dysfunction. The book that explains this is linked in our bio. Someone you know may be living inside this dynamic right now. Share this before it is too late.
A minute ago you were saying that my kids treat me like shit, and now you're gonna spite me out the will, and you're gonna leave it to the children. Is that what you're gonna do then? Is that what you're gonna do? Is that what it's all about? Power and control with money, is it? Is that what it is? Leave the scapegoat out the will, give it to all the golden children. You're gonna give all the... So this is the problem, this is what you did before, isn't it? I can't believe that you've even started bringing up the will. That you're going to leave me out the will, and you're going to give my money to my kids.
Yeah.
Is that what you're going to do then?
Yeah.
Okay then. Right. She's a fucking compulsive liar. Yes, she did start saying you were going to leave me out the will. Yes, she did. I'm a country liar. So.
Have I ever said that, Noel?
You were saying to me that you were going to leave me out the will.
Was this then, no?
Before you went away.
No, I don't think so, mate.
So I'm a fucking liar.
You are. You fucking are.
Really?
You are.
We're playing that game.
You play with your life, but I never ever said that.
You never said that?
No.
100%. On whose life? On my life. Swear down on my life, you never said that.
On my grandkids' lives. There you go.
On all your grandkids' lives, you never said it?
Yeah, on all my grandkids' lives.
That's mad. On your grandkids' lives.
I know what you fucking say, you're a liar.
I'm a liar.
You fucking well are, yes, you are. You're fucking...
Why am I a liar? Why am I a liar?
I never fucking said that, that's why.
Swear, put your hands out and swear down my life that you never said that to me.
I don't swear now, but I swear on the kid around his life.
Swear on my life, go on.
I don't even swear on your life. I swear on your life.
You even touch my heart and say it?
Yeah.
Why would you do that when you know very well you're lying?
You're lying.
You're being a
I'll tell you what you're trying to do.
Go on.
You're trying to turn your dad against me, but he's all me, so fuck off.
You're alright, little manipulator, ain't you?
Yeah, like you.
So you're that cruel that you're swearing out on all your family members' wives and what? Yeah, I'll fucking do. Swearing down on kids' lives, you fucking cunt. No, you only do something. No, honestly.
We'll take care of you.
No, you only do
But you know what, you need to be put away from
something.
me. You need to be put away from me.
Hey Jim, what is DARVO?
DARVO is an acronym, D-A-R-V-O. What it stands for is an emotional abuse technique that a perpetrator of interpersonal violence will use to deflect responsibility when they're confronted with their behaviors. So D-A-R-V-O, it stands for deny, attack, reverse victim offender. When you confront someone like this on their bad behavior, the first thing they're going to do is they're going to deny that it ever happened. I never said that, I never did that. And then they go on the attack, accusing you of doing the same kind of a thing, and they try to reverse the victim and offender role. The next thing you know, they're portraying themselves as the victim and you're the offender. And that's part of this whole gaslighting and emotional abuse pattern that happens. I think it's really helpful to become aware of it. It can lead to self-doubt, self-blame, losing a sense of yourself, something that narcissists, abusers, and sexual abusers will do to people. We just did a longer YouTube video on DARVO, so you may want to check that out.
Hey Jim.
DARVO is an abuse tactic that makes you doubt yourself. I'm Melanie Bridgen, family law solicitor. If you've ever confronted someone about their abusive behaviour and somehow ended up apologising to them, you may have experienced DARVO. DARVO stands for Deny, Attack, Reverse, Victim and Offender. First, they deny what happened. They say that never happened. Then they attack you. You're crazy, you're too sensitive, you're always causing problems. And finally, they reverse the roles, making themselves the victim and you the offender. Suddenly you're defending yourself instead of discussing their behaviour. DARVO is commonly seen in controlling and coercive relationships and can continue long after separation, including during the family court process. The goal is simple: avoid accountability and make you question your reality. If this sounds familiar, keep records, trust your evidence, and remember that being blamed for someone else's behaviour does not make it your fault. DARVO is one of the most confusing tactics survivors experience because it turns the truth upside down. Recognising it is the first step to resisting it. I'm Melanie Bridgen, family law solicitor. Follow me for more on family law.
With your golden shower rolls. Well done.
Well, I was a, what's her name, my family, so it don't matter.
Yeah, you was the scapegoat, so you should have stopped the cycle, shouldn't you? You had the choice to. You actually, this is what pisses me off about scapegoats and golden children. Yeah, the golden child turns into a narc. We know that. But the scapegoat went through absolute pain, agony and suffering. So why does it then do it again? Why does it want to carry on that suffering, considering they suffered?
Why is it that so many people who are spiritually sensitive, who seem to have this inner knowing, this capacity for awareness, were born into families that were, shall we say, less than ideal, families that were dysfunctional, toxic, painful? And you might think, well, if the universe is so wise, if there's some kind of intelligence behind all this, why would it put these sensitive souls into such difficult circumstances? But what if I told you that this is not a mistake? What if the very thing you've been cursing, the very situation you've been trying to run from your entire life, is actually the most important thing? Not because suffering is noble, but because sometimes the hardest soil produces the strongest trees. See, we have this notion that spiritual awakening should come through pleasant experiences, through meditation retreats, through reading wise books, through sitting quietly in beautiful gardens. And yes, these things can help. But the real awakening, the kind that shakes you to your bones, often comes through fire. It comes through difficulty. It comes through having everything you thought you needed stripped away until all that remains is what you truly are. Think about it this way. If you were born into a perfectly harmonious family where everyone was kind and understanding, where love flowed freely and naturally, would you ever question anything? Would you ever look deeper? Would you ever have to develop that inner strength, that capacity to see through illusion? Probably not. You'd simply flow along with the current, never knowing there was anything else. But a toxic family, a dysfunctional family, they give you something else entirely. They give you friction. They give you problems that cannot be solved by ordinary means. They give you situations where you cannot simply go along with what everyone else is doing, because what everyone else is doing is clearly mad. And in that friction, in that impossibility, something begins to wake up. Let me put it to you another way. When a grain of sand gets into an oyster, it irritates, it hurts. The oyster cannot simply eject it. So what does the oyster do? It begins to coat the grain of sand with layers of nacre, slowly, patiently, and eventually that irritating grain becomes a pearl. The most beautiful thing the oyster creates comes from the thing that hurt it most. Your toxic family was the grain of sand. And you, through all your struggles, through all your pain, through all those years of trying to understand why they were the way they were, you've been creating. You've been developing something that people born into easy circumstances never have to develop. Wisdom. Real wisdom. Not the kind you read in books, but the kind that comes from having to figure out how to survive when everything around you is chaos. But here's where it gets really interesting. A toxic family doesn't just create problems. It creates a very specific kind of problem. It creates confusion about love. And this, strange as it sounds, is the gateway to awakening. You see, most people never question what love is. They simply accept whatever their family taught them. If their family was loving, they assume that's what love looks like. If their family was distant, they assume love is supposed to be distant. They never have to think about it. They never have to examine it. They simply repeat the pattern. But when you're born into a toxic family, you cannot do this. The pattern is so obviously broken that you cannot simply repeat it. You might try it first. Many do, but eventually something in you rebels. Something in you says, no, this isn't right. This isn't what love is supposed to be. And in that moment of rebellion, in that refusal to accept the pattern, you've taken the first step toward awakening, because now you must figure out for yourself what love actually is. You cannot rely on what you were taught. You cannot trust the programming. You have to go deeper. You have to look within. You have to discover what love means when it's not mixed up with manipulation, with control, with conditions, with all the garbage your family attached to it. Not to suffer, though there was suffering. Not to be damaged, though there was damage. But to be forced to wake up, to be forced to question, to be forced to look deeper than most people ever have to look. Now, I want to be clear about something. This doesn't mean the pain wasn't real. It doesn't mean what happened to you was okay. It doesn't mean you should feel grateful for abuse or neglect or whatever it was your family did. That would be missing the point entirely. The pain was real. The damage was real. What happened to you was not right. But here's the thing about reality. It doesn't care about our ideas of right and wrong. A tree doesn't grow straight by being kept in a greenhouse. It grows straight by being bent by the wind, by having to reach for the light, by having to develop deep roots to keep from being blown over. The wind is not kind. The wind is just wind. But without the wind, the tree would never develop strength. Your family was the wind, and you, whether you know it or not, have been developing roots that go very deep, roots that most people never have to grow. And those roots, that depth, that's what makes you capable of understanding things that others cannot understand. Think about the people you know who had easy childhoods, pleasant, comfortable, everything handed to them. What are they like now? I'm not saying they're bad people, but often they have a certain shallowness to them, don't they? A certain inability to grasp the darker, deeper aspects of life. They live on the surface because they've never had to go beneath it. They believe in fairy tales because their life has been something of a fairy tale. But you cannot believe in fairy tales. You've seen behind the curtain. You know that families can be cruel, that parents can be selfish, that love can be twisted into something ugly. And while this knowledge was painful to acquire, it has made you real in a way that protected people never become. You've been stripped of illusions. And while most people spend their entire lives clinging to illusions, you don't have that luxury. You had to see things as they actually are. And seeing things as they actually are, that's the beginning of wisdom. That's the beginning of spiritual awakening.
The trauma of malignant maternal narcissism does not die with one child. It replicates generation after generation. Wounds harden into patterns. Patterns calcify into curses. What should have been a bloodline of love becomes a lineage of inherited pain and suffering. Children are turned into weapons, their loyalty poisoned, their innocence corrupted, their curse spreads through the family's tree until blood itself carries her signature of ruin. This is the tragedy of malignant motherhood. Not just the destruction of one child, but the desecration of a bloodline. Malignant mothers are the deadliest variant. She wears motherhood as a mask, but her womb breeds ruin. They do not nurture, they annihilate. Children born to be crucified in her shadow. Her home is no refuge. It is a tomb, a prison, a graveyard of spirits. Maternal mask, sadistic core. She drinks her children's pain as proof of power. She breeds wounds, not love. Her family tree drips with trauma, not fruit. Her children inherit scars, not blessing. Her legacy is generational curse etched in blood.
with your golden show rolls. Well done.
Well, I was a what's the name, my family, so it don't matter.
Yeah, you was the scapegoat, so you should have stopped the cycle, shouldn't you? You had the choice to.
Her legacy is generational curse etched in blood.
So I was asked, why do narcissists love the streets? What is it about the streets that the narcissist is always going to the streets? The streets are the fast life, okay? The streets is where it's drinking, drugging, and prostitution. The streets are filled with excitement, and narcissists love excitement. Narcissists are thrill seekers, okay? So that's why I say narcissists love the streets. The other thing about the streets is all about fast money, okay? So a narcissist doesn't want to work 9 to 5. Most of the time, they're looking for the easiest way to get over on somebody, okay? That's why they manipulate people a lot of times for money. Some narcissists do this, all right? So they love the streets as well because that's where they can make a quick buck as well. Whatever they may do, trying to get over on people and stuff like that. The narcissist is always going to be where the action's at, all right? They don't want to be sitting home bored out of their minds and everything like that. They need excitement.
The trauma of malignant maternal narcissism does not die with one child. It replicates generation after generation. Wounds harden into patterns. Patterns calcify into curses. What should have been a bloodline of love becomes a lineage of inherited pain and suffering. Children are turned into weapons, their loyalty poisoned, their innocence corrupted. Their curse spreads through the family's tree until blood itself carries her signature of ruin. This is the tragedy of malignant motherhood. Not just the destruction of one child, but the desecration of a bloodline. Malignant mothers are the deadliest variant. She wears motherhood as a mask, but her womb breeds ruin. They do not nurture, they annihilate. Children born to be crucified in her shadow. Her home is no refuge. It is a tomb, a prison, a graveyard of spirits. Maternal mask, sadistic core. She drinks her children's pain as proof of power. She breeds wounds, not love. Her family tree drips with trauma, not fruit. Her children inherit scars, not blessing. Her legacy is generational curse etched in blood.
I believe the number one reason to go no contact from one's toxic family of origin is found in the book of 1 Corinthians. 1 Corinthians 10:14 reads, "Therefore, dearly beloved, shun, keep clear away from, avoid by flight, if need be, any sort of idolatry." Notice the phrase avoid by flight, any sort of idolatry. Avoid by flight means to get as far away from something or someone in as short amount of time as possible. We are to place ourselves as far away from idolatry as is humanly possible, not simply go no contact with it. I'd now like to read a verse from the book of Ezekiel. Verse 4 of the 14th chapter of Ezekiel tells us that man takes the idols of self-will and the idols of unsubmissiveness into his heart. Unsubmissiveness to the impulses of one's conscience is tantamount to idolatry in the mind of God. Self-willfulness, wresting control of one's life destiny from the hands of the inner consciousness, where God communicates with us, and placing that destiny under the control of the will, this is idolatry, according to Ezekiel. Malignant, covert narcissists, as well as their enablers, are the worst of idolaters. They have placed their own selfish will on a pedestal far above the will of any higher power, God in particular. I don't want any part of my family of origin's idolatry. I don't want it anywhere around me. People who practice abuse practice idolatry. There's no other way around it. And we have been instructed by God with commandment from his written word. Avoid by flight, if necessary, every sort of idolatry. We are exhorted by God to flee the presence of our abusers, to get away from them as quickly as possible, as far as we can. Fleeing out from under the hand of your abuser, it is not a violation of the will of God. No, fleeing from a situation in which you are under the power of an abuser is acting in accordance with the will of God. Thank you for watching.